Thursday, U.S. President Donald Trump unveiled his, quote, fair and reciprocal plan, outlining his intention to raise tariffs on countries he says have imposed unfair tariffs on U.S. exports, singling out the European Union.
He says non-monetary tariffs such as tests on cars, presumably referring to some sort of regulation, that will be accounted for here as well. He says limitations on trade will not be accepted, and that Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, he will be the one coming up with numbers equivalent to those limitations and to other non-tariff barriers.
U.S. trade with the EU is probably arguably one of the most important commercial relationships globally.
The EU's been very nasty. They don't treat us right on trade. They don't treat us right on the military either.
Did you know Trump lost 93% of his legal battles? That's right, folks. Our very stable genius couldn't even win a game of rock, paper, scissors with Lady Justice. But wait, there's more. Trump's brilliant strategy included firing the folks who oversee nukes, because who needs those pesky things anyway, right? Stick around to see how many more face palms you'll do as we unpack the great American meltdown. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Alright folks, buckle up because we're about to dive into the wild world of Trump's trade tantrums. Remember when our orange friend promised to make America great again? Well, he sure made it great on everyone's nerves instead. So picture this, Trump decides to play trade war with, well, pretty much everyone. Because why have allies when you can have enemies, right? His brilliant plan, slap tariffs on everything that moves, even Canada. You know, that terrifying threat to the north with their maple syrup and politeness. But hey, why stop at Canada when you can tick off all your friends? Trump's tariff tirade hit the EU, India, and Japan too, because nothing says America first like putting America in the doghouse with all its buddies. It's like he was playing a global game of how fast can I make everyone hate us?
And says hiking up tariffs on foreign exports will cut trillions of dollars in trade deficits and bring back jobs to Americans.
Put simply, it is a lose-lose scenario.
Trump says that other countries can either reduce their own tariffs or eliminate their trade barriers, so leaving the door open here to some negotiation. He also is celebrating that the EU lowered its tariff to 2.5%.
Trump has already announced a 25% import tax on all steel and aluminum.
He's saying first, they have decided to charge these reciprocal tariffs, and what he's explaining here is that they're not only going to be matching tariff rates in other countries, but they are going to be considering things like value-added tax systems and other non-tariff barriers will also be considered as they go country by country, they say, and deciding what tariff rate to impose.
The EU's 10% tariff on imported cars and the value-added tax on imported goods, something the EU says is not the same as a tariff because the value-added tax is also imposed on domestic goods.
Now, Grumpy Trumpy claimed these tariffs would flood the US with jobs. Spoiler alert, it was more like a trickle of tears from American businesses. You see, when you start a trade war, other countries tend to fight back. Who knew, right? Certainly not the stable genius in the White House. Canada, being the polite neighbor they are, decided to respond with a boycott. Suddenly, American tourism became about as popular as a skunk at a perfume party. I mean, who needs those beautiful national parks and bustling cities when you can stay home and watch paint dry? Am I right? But wait, there's more. Trump's trade war logic was truly something to behold. It went something like this. If I shoot myself in the foot, surely other countries will feel the pain. It's like trying to win a boxing match by repeatedly punching yourself in the face. Bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off. And boy, did it pay off. In all the wrong ways. The economy started to wobble like Trump's toupee in a strong wind. American businesses faced increased costs, which they happily passed on to consumers like a game of hot potato. Because who doesn't love paying more for everyday goods?
And I was one of the people that led. He wanted to go to the end and he wanted to stay leader. He's not equipped mentally. He wasn't equipped 10 years ago mentally, in my opinion. He'd let the Republican Party go to hell. If I didn't come along, the Republican Party wouldn't even exist right now. Mitch McConnell never really had it.
And he says that the reciprocal tariff system will bring fairness back, and we're going to have a level playing field, Kelly. So still a lot more.
One of those pressure points, according to Trump's memorandum, is the amount of shellfish the U.S. imports from the EU compared to how much the U.S. exports to Europe.
Presumably that's an allusion to the EU's tariff on American cars. They had a 10% tariff on U.S. cars. Ours is about 2.5%. There had been reports earlier this week that they were agreeing to lower those. Trump's celebrating that in the Oval Office right now.
Proportionate and decisive countermeasures. That is what European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said would come in response to what the EU is calling unjustified tariffs by the United States.
But hey, at least we were winning, right? I mean, if by winning you mean watching allies turn into frenemies and leaving the US economy with a nasty hangover, then sure, we were totally crushing it. The reality of Trump's tariff tantrum was about as pretty as his spray tan after a rainy day. Experts were shouting from the rooftops that these tariffs were more harmful than beneficial to the US economy. But why listen to experts when you can trust your gut, especially when that gut is filled with McDonald's? And let's not forget the promises. Oh, the promises. Trump's rhetoric around tariffs often included claims that they would lead to a flood of jobs in the US, but the reality was more akin to a trickle of tears from affected industries which faced layoffs and reduced competitiveness. It's like he confused creating jobs with creating chaos. The whole fiasco was criticized as self-destructive, with many arguing that it harmed US interests more than it helped. But hey, who needs a stable economy when you can have stable genius, right? Alright folks, let's take a wild ride through Trump's foreign policy circus. If you thought his economic shenanigans were bad, wait till you see how he managed to tick off world leaders faster than you can say kafif. Remember when we used to have allies? Well, Donnie decided that was so last administration. He figured, why be friends with democracies when you can cozy up to dictators? It's like he was playing a twisted game of opposite day on the world stage. Take his bromance with Putin, for example. Trump trusted this KGB agent more than his own intelligence agencies. Because when you think honest and trustworthy, you definitely think of a guy who used to spy for the Soviet Union, right? It's like Trump forgot he was supposed to be the leader of the free world, not Putin's biggest fanboy. But hey, at least he was consistent in his inconsistency. When it came to Ukraine, Trump's brilliant strategy was basically to let Russia keep the land they stole. It's like telling a burglar, keep the TV, we didn't need it anyway. He even suggested that Ukraine shouldn't join NATO because who needs allies when you've got friends like Putin? And let's not forget his diplomatic skills with actual allies. During a meeting with Prime Minister Modi of India, Trump decided to show off his incredible respect for other world leaders by, wait for it, posting a mocking photo of Modi after their interview. Nothing says I value our alliance quite like publicly ridiculing the leader of the world's largest democracy, right? But Trump's negotiation skills didn't stop there. Oh no, he had a special technique. Give away everything before you even start talking. It's like he took The Art of the Deal and decided to write a sequel called The Art of the Squeal. Diplomats were scratching their heads, wondering if Trump had accidentally swapped his negotiation playbook with a How to Lose Friends and Alienate Countries manual. And boy, did it work! Experts noticed that Trump's foreign policy was changing America's global reputation faster than he could tweet fake news. Allies were feeling sidelined, questioning US commitments, and probably wondering if they could trade Trump for a more reasonable leader, maybe a potted plant or a particularly clever golden retriever. Meanwhile, adversaries like Russia were getting bolder. It's almost like treating your enemies better than your friends might have some negative consequences. Who knew? But the real kicker? Trump's rhetoric started sounding an awful lot like the authoritarian leaders he admired so much. He was throwing around words like conquest and annexation like they were going out of style. It's as if he forgot he was supposed to be leading a democracy, not auditioning for the role of Bond villain. Well folks, just when you thought Trump's presidency couldn't get any weirder, he discovered email. Yep, you heard that right. The man who couldn't string together a coherent tweet was given access to an entire inbox. It's like giving a toddler a megaphone and a mailing list. What could possibly go wrong? Turns out a lot. Trump's idea of email etiquette is about as refined as a bull in a china shop. His favorite tactic? All caps. Because nothing says I'm a stable genius like digital shouting, right? It's like he's trying to compensate for something. Maybe he thinks the bigger the letters, the bigger the hands, but the real kicker is the content of these emails. Trump's not just sending out policy updates or boring old press releases. Oh no, that would be too normal. Instead, he's firing off messages that would make even the most desperate spam bot blush. push. Take this gem for example. Will you stand with Trump if I'm impeached in another Democrat witch hunt? Spoiler alert, there's no option for no. It's like a choose your own adventure book, but all the choices lead to MAGA land. And then there's this beauty. Ben, don't think, just answer. Ah yes, the cornerstone of any healthy democracy, blind obedience. Who needs critical thinking when you've got Trump telling you what to do? It's like he's running a countrywide game of Simon Says. But Simon's wearing a bad toupee and has a spray tan addiction. But wait, there's more. Trump's not just content with sending out mind-numbing emails. He's also decided to expand his merchandise line. And what screams tough guy more than pink MAGA hats? That's right, our orange friend thought it would be a great idea to sell salmon-colored headwear, because nothing says I'm a serious political figure like looking like you just stumbled out of a My Little Pony convention. Political experts are having a field day with Trump's email strategy. They're saying his campaigns read like a bizarre mix between a used car salesman and a conspiracy theorist who's had one too many Red Bulls. It's like he's trying to sell you a slightly dented 1998 Honda Civic while also convincing you that the moon landing was faked and aliens are controlling the weather. The effectiveness of these email campaigns? Well, let's just say they're about as successful as Trump's stakes. Many experts are arguing that this chaotic, sensational approach is actually alienating potential supporters. It's like Trump's trying to win a popularity contest by seeing how many people he can annoy in one go. Spoiler alert, it's a lot. But here's the real question. Is anyone actually falling for this? Are there people out there reading these emails and thinking, wow, this guy really knows what he's talking about? If so, I've got a bridge to sell them and a couple of pink MAGA hats to go with it. Well, folks, if you thought Trump's emails were a disaster, wait till you hear about his administrative skills. Ever wonder what happens when you put a bull in a china shop? Well, Trump decided to test that theory in the White House. And let me tell you, it was about as graceful as a drunk elephant trying to do ballet. Our orange friend started his term thinking he was going to drain the swamp, but instead he ended up creating a whole new ecosystem of chaos. It's like he misheard the instructions and thought they said, strain the swamp through a colander of incompetence. And boy, did he deliver. Trump's idea of hiring the best people? It was like he was playing a twisted game of who's the biggest dummy. Only instead of winning a prize, the winners got to run the country. Experts say he often picked folks who would make him look smart by comparison. It's like he was building a human shield of incompetence to protect his own ego. The result, a revolving door of staff that spun faster than Trump's Twitter feed. The turnover rate was so high, you'd think the White House was a fast food joint during rush hour. In just the first year, a whopping 91% of senior staff either quit or got the boot. It was like musical chairs, but instead of music stopping, it was common sense. But here's where it gets really wild. In his infinite wisdom, Trump accidentally fired the people in charge of nukes. Yes, you heard that right. The guy with access to the big red button decided to play Russian roulette with nuclear safety. It's like he thought nuclear football was just a new sport he could tweet about. And when they realized the oopsie, the scramble to rehire was like watching a bunch of headless chickens trying to solve a Rubik's Cube. It was a disaster of epic proportions, with potential mushroom clouds on the horizon. But hey, who needs nuclear experts anyway, right? I'm sure Putin would be happy to lend a hand. But wait, there's more. Trump's team, in their infinite wisdom, decided to spice up Valentine's Day with a little poem. And by spice up, I mean completely ruin. They posted this little gem on social media. Roses are red, violets are blue, come here illegally and we'll deport you. Because nothing says love like forced relocation, am I right? It's like they were trying to win the most tone-deaf administration award. Spoiler alert, they won by a landslide. And let's not forget about Trump's stellar record in court. His administration had a 93% failure rate when their agency actions were contested. That's right, 93%. It's like they were actively trying to lose. I've seen better success rates in a game of drunken darts. It just goes to show, when it comes to following the law, Trump's team was about as competent as a fish trying to climb a tree. But hey, at least Trump had a solid economic policy, right? Wrong. His idea of managing the country's finances was about as sophisticated as a toddler's lemonade stand. Only instead of lemonade, he was selling snake oil. And instead of a stand, it was the entire US economy. While the country's finances were going up in flames, Trump was busy posting memes and tweeting about how great everything was. It's like watching a captain declare smooth sailing while the ship is sinking. Well, folks, it looks like our orange friend's presidency was about as successful as a chocolate teapot. Trump's time in the White House turned out to be a real-life episode of how to lose allies and alienate countries. Who knew that running a country wasn't as easy as firing people on reality TV? But here's the kicker, Trump's presidency wasn't just a comedy of errors, it was a wake-up call for democracy. Experts are saying he treated the Constitution like it was written in disappearing ink. Remember all those jokes about serving more than 2 terms? Not so funny when you realize he might have been serious. So what's the moral of this story? Maybe it's time we start paying attention to what our politicians are actually saying, instead of just how loudly they're saying it. Because let's face it, when it comes to running a country, being a loudmouth doesn't exactly qualify as foreign policy expertise. Or aren't you glad we learned that lesson?